So, very warm welcome and a very good afternoon to our eminent speaker and my dear friend, Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha, our principal, Professor Papia Chakraborty, my dear colleagues, and all our students. So, we are celebrating in a virtual platform the National Science Day. National Science Day is commemorated in honor of Sir C.V. Raman, who discovered Raman effect on 28th February 1928. And he was the first Asian to win the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930. So just before we proceed to the main seminar, just I will give you a free 3-4 minutes prelude about the importance of the National Science Day. Then we will go to the main seminar. C.V. Raman, also known as Chandrasekhara Venkataraman, he was born in 1888 in Tiruchirappalli, and his father was a mathematics and physics teacher. উনি প্রায় 11 বছর বয়সে ক্লাস 10 পাশ করেছিলেন এবং 13 বছর বয়সে ক্লাস 12 পাশ করে গেছিলেন। আর 1906 at the age of 18, when he was still a graduate student, he published a first scientific paper on unsymmetrical diffraction bands due to rectangular aperture in a British journal, Philosophical Magazine, in 1906. But his father, he wanted him to go to the finance service. So he qualified the Indian Finance Service and he obtained the first position in the entrance exam. So he was posted in Calcutta as an assistant accountant general. But he was mesmerized by the Indian Association for Cultivation of Science, and he was he has মানে ওনার ভেতরে এত বিজ্ঞানের এত জিজ্ঞাসা ছিল এবং উনি বিজ্ঞান করতে এত ভালোবাসতেন যে উনি পার্ট টাইমে গিয়ে গিয়ে কাল্টিভেশন অফ সায়েন্সে উনি বিজ্ঞান করতেন। ওনার চাকরি ছিল গভর্নমেন্টের চাকরি, অ্যাকাউন্টেন্ট জেনারেল হিসেবে, অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্ট অ্যাকাউন্টেন্ট জেনারেল হিসেবে কাজ করতেন, তার সাথে সাথে উনি বিজ্ঞান করতেন এবং এই অবস্থাতেই ওনার অনেক ডক্টরেট মানে অনেক পিএইচডি স্টুডেন্ট ছিল এই অবস্থাতে। তারপরে উনি নিজের এই অ্যাকাউন্টেন্ট এই গভর্নমেন্ট জব ছেড়ে দিলেন and he was elected. Further, he joined Cultivation of Science, Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, and he was elected Secretary of IACS in 1919. And in 1928, উনি লাইটের স্ক্যাটারিং নিয়ে যখন কাজ করছিলেন, and he named it as Raman effect, and in 1930 he won the Nobel Prize in Physics. And in 1929 the British government ওনাকে নাইটহুড দিয়েছিল এবং ওনাকে তারপর থেকে নাম দেওয়া হয়েছিল প্রফেসর স্যার সিভি রামান। এটা ছবিটা দেখতে পাচ্ছ যে আমাদের স্টুডেন্টসদের জন্য এগুলো বলা যে উনি এই আরো এই 1930-এ যে যারা নোবেল প্রাইজ অ্যাওয়ার্ড সেরেমনিতে এখানে উনি সিভি রামান ছিলেন, তার পাশে ছিলেন ফিশারের যারা তোমরা স্টিরিওকেমিস্ট্রি পড়ো, হান্স ফিশার ইন কেমিস্ট্রি, Landsteiner in medicine, and Sinclair Lewis in literature. Literature এনারা সবাই দাঁড়িয়ে ওনারা নিজেদের 1932-তে উনি কাজ করলেন কোয়ান্টাম ফোটন স্পিন নিয়ে with Suri Bhagavantam. 1933-তে উনি কাল্টিভেশন অফ সায়েন্স থেকে রিটায়ার করে ইন্ডিয়ান ইনস্টিটিউট অফ সায়েন্সে ডিরেক্টর হয়ে গেলেন। আর 1948-এ উনি ইন্ডিয়ান ইনস্টিটিউট অফ সায়েন্স থেকে আবার রিটায়ারমেন্ট নিয়ে নিজস্ব ইনস্টিটিউট রামান রিসার্চ ইনস্টিটিউট ব্যাঙ্গালোরে উনি ইয়ে করলেন, উনি এস্টাবলিশ করলেন। তো এইটা যে আমি বলছিলাম যে রামান এফেক্ট নিয়ে আমরা বলি, স্ক্যাটারিং নিয়ে বলি। সো হোয়াট ইজ অ্যাকচুয়ালি রামান এফেক্ট এবং রামান স্ক্যাটারিং আমরা জানি ইট ইজ নাথিং বাট ডিফিউজ রিফ্লেকশন। রিফ্লেকশন হচ্ছে একটা অর্গানাইজড ওয়েতে একটা লাইট ইনসিডেন্ট হয় এবং সেম অ্যাঙ্গেলে রিফ্লেক্ট হয়ে যায়। কিন্তু যখন এটা একটা ডিফিউজড মোডে রিফ্লেক্ট হয় তখন সেটাকে স্ক্যাটারিং বলা হয়। এই স্ক্যাটারিংটা দুই প্রকারের হতে পারে। একরকম স্ক্যাটারিং হয় যখন ভাবো যে একটা বল কোনো দেওয়ালে ধাক্কা মারলো, ধাক্কা মেরে ফিরে এলো, একটা রিজিড দেওয়ালে ধাক্কা মেরে ফিরে এলো, তার মানে একটা রিফ্লেকশন, সে রিফ্লেক্টেড হয়ে ফিরে এলো, একটা কলিশন হলো। এই ধরনের কলিশনকে বলা হয় ইলাস্টিক স্ক্যাটারিং, ইলাস্টিক কলিশন বলা হয়। বা এবার ফিরে আসাটাকে বলা হলো যেখানে কোনো এনার্জি বলটা কাউকে দিল না, সেই ধরনের কলিশনকে বলা হয় ইলাস্টিক কলিশন। সেই রকম লাইটের ফোটন এরকম তোমার কোনো একটা সারফেস, মলিকুলার সারফেসে গিয়ে ফিরে যাচ্ছে, তখন সেটা যদি কোনো এনার্জি না দেয় এবং সম্পূর্ণ নিজের এনার্জি সহ সে ফিরে আসে, লাইটের ফোটন, তাহলে সেই ধরনের স্ক্যাটারিংকে বলা হয় র্যালে স্ক্যাটারিং। কিন্তু যদি কোনো লাইট এবার মলিকিউলকে ভাইব্রেট করিয়ে কিছু এনার্জি মলিকিউলকে দিয়ে দেয়, যেমন একটি স্ট্রাইকার ক্যারামবোর্ডের গুটিকে সে ধাক্কা মারছে এবং কিছুটা এনার্জি সে ইম্পার্ট করছে ক্যারামবোর্ডের গুটিতে, সেম অ্যাজ ইট ইজ ইম্পার্টিং সাম এনার্জি টু দিস মলিকিউলস যারা ভাইব্রেট করতে শুরু করবে, তাহলে কিছুটা এনার্জি এই ফোটনটা দিয়ে দেবে এবং এটা এই যে ম্যাটারে যে ইলেকট্রনগুলো একটা হাইয়ার ভাইব্রেশনাল এনার্জি লেভেলে চলে যাবে বা তাদের এনার্জি নিয়ে নেবে এবং আবার সে রিল্যাক্স করে নিজের স্টেটে ফিরে আসবে, তখন সেই যতটা অ্যামাউন্ট অফ এনার্জি সে এই ফোটনের নিয়েছিল ততটুকু অ্যামাউন্ট অফ এনার্জি সে ডিসিপেট করবে। তো এই ধরনের যখন একটা এরকম দেখতে পাচ্ছ যে যখন একটা এক্সাইটেড স্টেটে ম্যাটারের ইলেকট্রনটা গেল এবং একটা হায়ার এনার্জি স্টেট বা একটা লোয়ার এনার্জি ভাইব্রেশনাল স্টেটে ফিরে এলো, তখন সে লাইট এমিট করলো বা স্ক্যাটার করলো, সেই ধরনের স্ক্যাটারিংকে বলা হয় রামান স্ক্যাটারিং। এবং প্রতিটি আলাদা আলাদা মলিকিউলের আলাদা আলাদা এইরকম এই যে স্ক্যাটারিং, এই যে লাইটকে একটা স্পেকট্রোফোটোমিটার দিয়ে তাকে মাপা যায়। স্পেকট্রোফোটোমিটারের যখন আমি একটা মাপি, যদি স্পেকট্রোফোটোমিটার দিয়ে তার স্পেকট্রা মাপি, প্রতিটি মলিকিউলের আলাদা একটা সিগনেচার আছে, প্রতিটি মলিকিউলের একটা আলাদা সিগনেচার আছে। তো আমরা সেটাই উনি বার করেছিলেন যে রামান স্পেকট্রা, উনি যে এরকম দেখতে পাচ্ছ যে উনি রামান যে স্পেকট্রোস্কোপ, এরকম ভাবে একটা স্যাম্পলের মধ্যে একটা লেজার লাইট যখন স্যাম্পলের মধ্যে যাচ্ছে, যে ইনইলাস্টিক স্ক্যাটারিং আসছে সেটাকে অ্যাম্প্লিফাই করে যখন কোনো মলিকিউলের সিগনেচার, তার ফিঙ্গারপ্রিন্ট নেওয়া হচ্ছে, প্রতিটি মলিকিউলের আলাদা রামান স্পেকট্রা পাওয়া যাবে। যেমন একটা ফরেন্সিক সায়েন্সে প্রতিটি ক্রিমিনালের একটা ডেটাবেস থাকে ফিঙ্গারপ্রিন্টের, সেরকম প্রতিটি মলিকিউলের একটা ডেটাবেস আছে রামান স্পেকট্রা। সেইটা করে জানা যায় যে এটা কি মলিকিউল। তো এইটার ইউটিলিটি কোথায় আছে? এন রামান স্ক্যানার্স যেগুলো ব্যবহার করা হয় টু চেক ওয়েদার, মানে কোনো ব্লাডে গ্লুকোজ, কোলেস্টেরল, ইউরিক অ্যাসিড আছে, মেডিসিনাল ইউজ। তারপরে ইন এনভায়রনমেন্টাল সায়েন্স যদি কোনো পলিউটেন্টস থাকে, নার্কোটিক্স কোনো থাকে, মানে ড্রাগ ফরেন্সিকের ক্ষেত্রে কোনো ফরেন্সিক যে কোনো মেটেরিয়াল যদি আইডেন্টিফাই করতে হয় স্ক্যানার দিয়ে, এই রামান স্পেকট্রোস্কোপ ছোট্ট করে ভেতরে দেওয়া আছে, তাই দিয়ে সেটাকে চেক করা হয়। এবং ক্যান্সার স্ক্রিনিং এর জন্যও রামান স্পেকট্রা খুব বেশিভাবে ইউজ হয়। এবং এই প্রফেসর সিভি রামানের এই বিশাল কর্মকাণ্ডের জন্য এবং তার এই উৎসাহর জন্য 1986, উনি তো 1970 মারা গেলেন, 1986 ন্যাশনাল কাউন্সিল ফর সায়েন্স টেকনোলজি কমিউনিকেশনস প্রপোজ করলো যে 28 ফেব্রুয়ারিকে ন্যাশনাল সায়েন্স ডে বলে ডিক্লেয়ার করা হোক। যেখানে কেন? যাতে টু প্রমোট দ্য স্পিরিট অফ সায়েন্স অ্যান্ড টেকনোলজি and imbibe the scientific temperament in our young minds. তার জন্য আমাদের 28th February is celebrated as the National Science Day. And how is National Science Day celebrated in BKC College? through various outreach programs আমরা বিগত কত বছর ধরে আমরা নানানভাবে সেলিব্রেট করেছি, লাইক আমাদের অন্য স্কুলকে ডেকে আমাদের স্টুডেন্টরা তাদের ল্যাব ভিজিট করিয়েছে, তাদের এক্সপেরিমেন্ট দেখিয়েছে। উই হ্যাভ ওয়াল ম্যাগাজিনস, we have seminars, and like this we have so we celebrate in various ways so that they can pursue research in science. এই যে একটা সায়েন্টিফিক টেম্পারমেন্ট পারসু করাবার জন্য এইটাকে ফেব্রুয়ারি 28 থেকে নির্ধারিত করা হলো অ্যাজ ন্যাশনাল সায়েন্স ডে। তো এইটাকে ভিত্তি করে উই অ্যাজ আ ট্র্যাডিশন আমাদের কলেজ আমাদের বিভিন্ন সময় বিভিন্ন বছরে আমরা অনেক কটা স্লাইড ছিল, কষ্ট করে বানিয়েছিলাম, সো ভেরি সরি আই কুডন্ট শো, যেখানে আমাদের ন্যাশনাল সায়েন্স ডে বিকেসি কলেজ সেলিব্রেট করেছে উইথ আউটরিচ প্রোগ্রামস, উইথ স্টুডেন্ট সেমিনার্স, with quizzes, with seminars, but এখন প্যান্ডেমিকের জন্য we have gone in the virtual mode, and we are very glad to have with us Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha, whose theme is as in tune with today's modern scenario, that he will talk about biofuels. But before we start into his keynote address, I will request our principal, Professor Papia Chakraborty, to formally inaugurate the session. Over to you, madam.
Yeah. Thank you, Manashi. Thank you for your lucid talk on this, on the introductory talk. Hope my students they have come to know the essence of this National Science Day. So today I really welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha, who will be talking on the biofuel aspects. Now, this is a very relevant in today's scenario. As you know, the cost of petrol and diesel is really it's reached the century almost. So per liter. So we all know what is happening. So we are all concerned. We are all concerned about this depleting contest of these fossil fuels, and we are searching for biofuels as alternative sources of energy. Now, these biofuels, they are different types. Like we know there are solid biofuels, then which is taken from the wood or the energy crops. Then the liquid biofuels, which are the fermentation products of sugar and starches. They are bioethanol, biodiesel, biogas, etc. And the other one is gaseous biofuels, which are syngas or biohydrogen. Now there are generations. There are generations of biofuels. We call it generation. We had started long back with this exploration of biofuels as renewable energy. So the first generation biofuels were actually related to were from the food sources. So there was competition amongst the food crops and the fuel content. So now, so that has a negative net gain energy because of releasing more carbon. And apart from that, it was a competitive item, like how to generate in the same field that we are producing the crop which is for biofuels, or which are for our edible crops. So the field will be wasted if repeated cropping is done. So for that, we came to the second generation biofuel, and our main aim was to reduce the global warming, and so that the greenhouse gas content is lesser. So then came the leftover of food crops. That is the second generation biofuel, non-food crops item. There we found there is a positive net gain of energy. But again, that was not consistent. So we switched on to the third generation of biofuel, which was actually carbon neutral. That means absorption and emission was equal. And that was produced from microorganisms like algae. And still now this is being explored a lot. Another, the fourth generation biofuel, which we are exploring now, is the genetically engineered crops, where we are increasing the high lipid content of the modified organisms, and we are reaching the carbon negative part. So we started with the positive part, and now we are trying to reach to the negative part. That is, we are actually making a carbon sink and carbon sequestering. So now the algae is the main source now. We are exploring it. It consists of 40% lipids, which can be converted to biodiesel. And green technologies have emerged as useful tools for the generation of clean fuels with the potential to minimize the effect of human activity on the environment. We are mainly concerned with the environment. So, however, there are constraints like productivity is less. We need a huge biomass, and for the productivity, high yield. So, and it is still below the required values. So, regarding these, there are national policies. The last national policy of biofuels in India was in 2018 by the Ministry of Non-Renewable Energy. The target was to blend 20% ethanol in petrol and 5% blending of diesel, biodiesel. And so there were two types, ethanol blended petrol program and the biodiesel program. And this is being done by the National Biofuel Coordination Committee. Our government of India has a committee which decides on this, and there are various projects running on this. So I welcome you, sir, who will highlight on these aspects, and hope we all will be in good knowledge. We'll all will be knowing a lot about this in what all happening is in India. And today's scenario is really, we are all concerned, the price hike of petrol and diesel. So, sir, welcome you again, and thank you, organizing committee, the Department of Chemistry, for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Chakraborty. I will now request our Head of Department, Dr. Angshupriya Shom, to please introduce our speaker.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our eminent speaker, Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha. Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha had his MSc from Jadavpur University and PhD from National Chemical Laboratory, Pune University. He had been to NSC Taiwan for postdoctoral research. Then he joined GISTAC Japan as STA JSPS Fellow, then AIST Japan as AIST Fellow. Then he joined Toyota CRDL as researcher. After that, he joined CSIR Indian Institute of Petroleum as senior scientist in 2007. Presently, he is the senior principal scientist, head of Biofuel Division, CSIR IIP, Dehradun. Main area of his research interest is heterogeneous catalysis, including hydroprocessing and photocatalysis. He has published more than 85 papers in international journals. Recently, he has published his work in reputed journals like ACS, Sustainable Chemistry and Engineering, Catalysis Communication, Chemistry European Journal, and so more. Not only that, he has documented his inventions through 25 patents. Major industrial outputs of his research are projects for BPCL, Petrochemical, DRDO, Farabi, ActiveChar, Biojet, Fuel Technologies, etc. today Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha is going to enlighten us with his extensive knowledge on the topic futuristic scenario of biofuels. Thank you very much, sir, for taking time out of your busy routine to deliver lecture in this webinar. We are eager to listen to your charismatic and informative lecture, which is very relevant to the nowadays. So I would like to request Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha to present his lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for kind introduction, and I take this opportunity to thank Professor Mansi and Professor Chakravarti for inviting me for this important function, and also thanks for setting the stage for the lecture. Now I will,
Anil, please will you put on your video once?
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much. And thanks a lot for introduction and all the background. And I am honored to be here for this National Science Day lecture. And I hope I can convince you about the importance of biofuels and the kind of scientific work that is being carried out and the newer technologies that are being developed. So I will upload my presentation.
Swarup, is the
The slide-
presentation coming? No, presentation is not coming.
No, slide is not coming.
Can you see the slides? No?
No.
No.
Okay.
Something is happening. I don't know. I could not set up my slide also.
Let me try again.
I don't know how to, if the slide can't be presented, because my slide also could not be presented. You should have checked it before, no? But it never happens like this.
No.
The slide is not being
My
presented.
screen, I'm trying to share my screen. Is it visible?
No, it is not visible.
No.
Just Shauru, what do we do? Do we change the link? I বুঝতে পারছি না. Something is happening. And I also couldn't.
I will just log out and relog in.
No, but I did it many a times, Anil.
Just try that.
No, I also tried it many a times, but I also could not do after logging out. Something is happening with this link. বুঝেছো, আমার মনে হচ্ছে something is happening with this link. Do we মানে আরেকটা instant একটা meeting? Do we start an instant meeting?
No, you present a tab. You present a tab.
Tab means?
Showing, no, you present your entire screen or present a window or present a tab.
No, nothing is being presented.
So I think
nothing is being present. We can't present anything. That is what is happening. It is not allowing. It is not allowing.
No. It's coming.
Now it's coming. Now it's coming.
Now it's visible.
Now it's coming.
Okay.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Let me open the presentation.
But you are presenting.
Yes,
now
it's okay.
it's
Okay. Okay. So I will start now. Thank you. So I will give about the current scenario and future direction, but more my work or whatever I will be talking about will be focused on. I am basically a catalysis scientist, so I work more on catalyst and material and process development. So I will be talking about this biofuels, catalysts and processes that we developed and which led to, probably you remember, the first, we made a history by making the first biofuel powered flight in India in August 2018. and which was followed by a proud moment for us in 2019 in January when we had the Indian Air Force aircraft flying on the biofuel made by us. So, just to give a brief background about the institute, we are located in Uttarakhand, Dehradun. As you are aware, we are part of CSIR, and we are a ISO certified institute, and we have successfully commercialized more than 50 technologies in the area of petroleum refining, natural gas, petrochemicals, and utilization of petroleum products. About my own division, we have 4 areas in our division. So I most work in catalytic conversion and hydroprocessing area, and we have a biodiesel, biolubricants and chemicals area. We have a specific pilot plants area, as well as we manufacture or we synthesize some fuels for strategic sector for defense, and so we have a small group working on that. And this is the overall staff of our division. We have 5 scientists, 5 technical staff, 5 technicians, 2 lab attendants. We have 11 ongoing PhD and nearly 25 project staff. So about contents of my presentation, I will give first a brief background, rather more detailed background about what is the need for these biofuels. In terms of it contributes to more tree plantation or afforestation. There are societal benefits, environmental impact, as well as it gives fuel security. I will talk in more detail about our own IIP biojet process, the catalyst and the process itself, the mechanisms. As we are in chemistry and in catalysis, I will talk more about details about the chemistry aspects of the process. And I will also talk about the product, how it was used in the aircraft, what were the results of those tests, and everything I will cover. So to go into the background of this biofuels, so we dream to have an integrated biorefinery concept in overall globally, and in India too we are trying for the same. To have sustainable technologies where we have integrated biorefineries in terms of that we have biomass, which can be taken to a biorefinery and it can be converted to either liquid biofuels, or it can be used to generate heat and electricity, or it could be converted to biomaterials, and even whatever ash is generated is recycled, and even the end of life biomaterials can be taken back into the biorefinery. So it is a concept where we do not have any waste, only CO2 emitted is taken back by the trees. So it is a completely neutral and sustainable kind of scenario. So when we started working on this renewable fuels or biofuels, the early biofuels, as we are well known, are oxygenated biofuels, that is ethanol and biodiesel. And these are commonly used, and the government, as it was mentioned by Professor Chakravarti, that government has mandates for having ethanol blending or biodiesel blending. But ethanol and biodiesel have their own limitations because they contain oxygen. So they are not truly drop-in kind of fuel, because normally the fuel should be pure hydrocarbon. So we move towards producing pure hydrocarbon fuels from these biomass derived oils. So these two biofuels are exactly identical to your normal diesel fuel or jet fuel or even gasoline fuel. So as it was mentioned that there were first generation of biofuels which were basically based on vegetable oil, and there was always a issue of food versus fuel kind of conflict. So very soon globally all the focus shifted towards inedible oils such as jatropha, karanj and camelina. So in Indian context, as we know that we have lot of trees which have like tree-borne oils. In terms of like jatropha, of course, it was something which was planted, but other than jatropha, we have other trees like mahua tree or even karanj tree. On each state, or like in Assam, we have nahor tree. All these oils are today not properly utilized. So all these oils can be directly converted into fuels, and what it adds to is that we have more tree plantation of trees, and we have a dual benefit, not in terms of more afforestation as well as more fuels. But the more futuristic is the third generation biofuels, which are basically based on either microbes like algae, or if we can use direct the lignocellulosic feedstocks to generate fuel. So what is the target for this renewable fuels in the we have fuel hydrocarbon fuels instead of oxygenate
Hello, I'm Avinash bhai.
to have lower cost, and whether we can use existing refinery scenarios, because we have several refineries in India, and those refineries, if they can take this kind of feedstocks directly, so nothing can be better than that. So there should not be any food chain disruption with the use of these biofuels. And we should focus more on the lignocellulosic like woody biomass as well as algal oils and all those kind of which are completely differentiated from the food. And they do not compete with the land which is used for agriculture. So if you look at the overview of the biofuel production, you can see there are several feedstocks which can be used to make biofuel. They can be sugars, starches, lignin, cellulose, hemicellulose, even natural oils. So if you look at the entire concept, this like sugars can go from by fermentation route and dehydration to produce ethanol. Starches, they can be converted into sugars and then by fermentation, and then they can be further used to make ethanol. Lignin, cellulose, hemicellulose, they can be hydrolyzed or can be directly converted, or they can be pyrolyzed or depolymerized or gasified. So when you gasify, you get syngas, and by Fischer-Tropsch route, you can make even green diesel or liquid fuel out of it. Bio-oils can be hydrotreated. And similarly, if you have natural oils like vegetable oils or used cooking oil, these kind of feedstocks can be directly taken in a refinery configuration. They can be hydrotreated or they can undergo FCC kind of reactions to produce liquid fuels. So in a more simplified way, if you look at the complete biorefinery concept, we have biomass which can undergo extraction. By extraction, we produce oil, and by transesterification, we can produce biodiesel. Or we can hydrolyze it by hydrolysis, and we can produce smaller molecules which can undergo fermentation, or they can directly go into fermentation process. Or the biomass can be gasified and we can produce syngas. Syngas can go to fermentation process and then further to make ethanol, or syngas can directly go to make liquid fuels or even to make methanol or hydrogen, depending on the situation or the catalyst and economics and all other factors. Or you can pyrolyze the biomass to make gas, and then by pyrolysis even you can make oil. And then hydrothermally you can treat this biomass, and you can produce hydrothermally treated diesel kind of liquids. So if you can look overall, the kind of processes involved are basically either transesterification to make biodiesel, or fermentation to make ethanol, or syngas route to make your liquid fuels. So this is a more detailed outlook of what the overall process, how it goes, and what are the different kind of products you can obtain depending on which route you are taking. So you can produce either, like if you take the vegetable oils which is shown on the top, it can go transesterification to make biodiesel, or you can hydrodeoxygenate and isomerize. And this is the area in which we are mostly focused to make green diesel. In addition to that, by you can also produce butanol if you have by fermentation route from sugar starch and sugarcane molasses. And then even you can make the feedstocks, petrochemical feedstocks like olefins, or you can make gasoline by after gasification you convert into hydrocarbons using Fischer-Tropsch route. And I will just briefly talk about this biodiesel, because we all know that biodiesel, it is very easy to make. It is a transistorification we can make even at our home. But in Indian context, the situation is that we need to look at the availability of the feedstock, and that is the source is basically vegetable oil. Either it could be inedible oils or it could be used cooking oil. But due to scarcity of these feedstocks, or rather these feedstocks are not properly streamlined in terms of the getting aggregated for making into biodiesel. So this has limited overall the program of making biodiesel successful in India. So other than biodiesel, since we know that for road transportation, the focus is gradually shifting towards more electric vehicles. So it is likely that in future we may have all the road transportation based on battery driven vehicles. So all these biofuels focus will is already shifted towards making air transportation fuels or aviation kerosene. And the more urgent imperative why the focus has shifted towards having biofuels for aircraft, because International Civil Aviation Organization has already set up a carbon offset and reduction scheme where it will become mandatory for all the countries to either purchase offsets for emitting CO2, or they have to use alternatives for whatever extra CO2 that is emitted since after year 2021. So because of this urgent need, there is a big race across the globe to have newer kind of aviation biofuel technologies which can help this international aviation to become green. So far in India, there has not been any technology to make these aviation biofuels. All the globally patented technology for aviation biofuels are produced from vegetable oil or animal fats in a two-step process. There is only one refinery called Altair, which is dedicatedly producing these sustainable aviation fuels for KLM to use on regular flights. Today, more than 2,500 commercial flights have flown using renewable fuels, and this number is continuously growing. A lot of focus has gone into research, demonstration, and commercial projects globally. So it is projected that over next several years, more refineries, feedstocks, and production pathways will appear. It shows that this area is moving gradually towards broader commercialization. So in Indian context, why we need to focus more on these biofuels as it was earlier emphasized, because we are mostly importing our crude oil. So India is dependent more than 80% on imported crude oil. And this import becomes more and more as we are growing economically. And for us, our defense sector does not have a strategic reserve of fuel in situations where we may have to have reserves for fuels where we don't have to depend on imported oil. And also looking at the geopolitical scenarios, and also for armed forces, we have not so far looked at 100% fuel supply security. So looking at all these situation, it is very much necessary for our country to have our own supply of dedicated fuels. And we looked at the different kind of domestic carbon sources which can be used to make these biofuels. So most abundant source today which we understand is the used cooking oil. Today it has been estimated that approximately 2 million tons annually, that is 10% of total edible oil consumed in India is available, but it is not aggregated. So already FSSAI has started a repurposed RUCO program, repurposed used cooking oil, where all these hotels and restaurants have to mandatorily provide this their used cooking oil for making biofuels. But today, as we understand that most of this used cooking oil goes down the drain and it adds to environmental burden. If we look at the example of China, today it collects and trades about more than 1 million tons per annum of its domestic used cooking oil. In our country, it is easy to access this used cooking oil from cantonments, canteens, community kitchens, and even hotels and restaurants. And if we look at the tree-borne oils, we have more than 400 species of trees identified in India which are growing wild. But since there is a lack of demand and no incentives for collection of the seeds, the supply side of this oils is limited. In addition to that, as we are agriculture dependent country, we can have short rotation crops like non-edible oil seeds like Niger, Carinata, and Camelina, which are mustard family plants. They can be planted and grown between staples as a second or third crop. So this will give the added income to the farmers. So, but this needs a organized long-term demand to stimulate the farmer interest. So today, we consume about 23 million ton cooking oil in India. So FSSI says that there is a potential to recover and use about 3 million tons of this after cooking. So I will go to the technology developed by IAP to make aviation fuels. So if you look at this slide, we have vegetable oil triglycerides. So in our technology, what we do is that we first do a pre-treatment where we remove all the metals, because vegetable oils will contain sodium, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and iron. So to make this feed amenable to our catalyst, we need to do a pre-treatment to remove all these metals. And after removal of these metals, we do a cracking. Cracking means we deoxygenate this triglyceride molecule, and we do selective cracking, isomerization, as well as aromatization. So there can be two processes. In one step, you only do deoxygenation and isomerization, and you can maximize your diesel production. But when you do also selective cracking, which is shown in the bottom side, you selectively produce aviation kerosene. So this all is done by tuning overall the property of the catalyst that goes for the process. So to describe the mechanism of the process that I was telling, this is a triglyceride molecule, and we use hydrogen. In presence of hydrogen, this triglyceride molecule is cleaved, and we produce propane. The backbone of this triglyceride molecule is a propane that is broken down, and we produce a intermediate acid and propane. And further, this intermediate acid undergoes decarboxylation process where this oxygen is basically removed from the hydrocarbon, and what we produce here is a pure hydrocarbon and CO2. And there can be other pathways also, like decarbonylation or even hydrodeoxygenation, where we add hydrogen to the entire process and we produce a hydrocarbon plus water. So there is no carbon loss in this process. So in addition to that deoxygenation reaction, there are other side reactions happening, like hydrogenation reaction, cracking, isomerization reaction, direct conversion reaction. There's other side reaction, aromatization and cyclization reactions. So we have several primary and secondary reaction happening. In addition, we also have some undesirable oligomerization reactions. So whenever we are doing these reactions, we need to have the conditions as well as catalysts which minimizes these oligomerization reactions, which tend to deactivate the catalyst. This is basically the process flow, how the reactor is used. Basically, it is a fixed bed reactor where the catalyst is packed and the feed is pumped through as a liquid on the catalyst bed. So after the reaction, this slide shows what are the properties of the aviation biokerosene that we produce in the process. In the extreme right side column, if you see the properties of biojet fuel, and on the next to it is the jet A1 fuel. So jet A1 fuel is your normal aviation kerosene fuel, and the right side is our biokerosene. And we'll see the property. meet all the properties of the jet fuel produced by this process. The most important property is the freezing point, because the freezing point of this fuel should be very low, about minus 47 degrees centigrade. And we are able to achieve this kind of low freezing point requirements using our process. So what we using this, as I mentioned, we were able to fuel one aircraft. We put about 25% of this fuel, and it reduced about your carbon dioxide footprint. So using 100% of this biojet fuel, we can reduce your carbon footprint by nearly about 80%. So normally when we are doing any process, we do a reaction mass balance, and this shows the liquid yield and the gas yield in the process. And we produce about nearly 80 to 85% of liquid, and the remaining gases are either propane, which can go as a LPG gas, and if we look at the fractions of different products, we produce gasoline, kerosene, and diesel in the process. So this slide I basically show to highlight the importance of the feed pretreatment. For any oil, we need to have a very suitable process which can remove all the metals from the process before we can do any kind of reaction. So this is to show how we started this work, and we continue to develop this technology. So initially we started using vegetable oil and normal refinery oil. We mix and we use different kind of catalysts. We optimize the reaction conditions, and we produce diesel and kerosene under different conditions. So actually earlier we started with used cooking oil, but we also worked with Jatropha and also mixture of Jatropha oil with refinery oils using different catalyst combinations. And with different conditions, we are either selectively able to produce diesel about 90%, or we can produce a mixture of diesel and aviation kerosene about 50-50%. And as we mentioned, we looked at other feedstocks like algal oil, and this algal oil and Jatropha oil, we developed newer kind of catalyst based on zeolites. And using algae oil, we found that we can improve our jet kerosene yield to nearly about 80%. And we are able to selectively do isomerization nearly up to 80-90%, which is very much required to make this fuel suitable for aircrafts, as it can meet the low freezing point requirement. And normally when we are developing this process, we do optimization of the conditions so that we understand under what conditions we can have the desirable products. And this is just an example of how we have screened different kind of catalysts using different feedstocks. And we always achieve conversions of more than 99%, nearly 100% conversion. And this is a stable conversion. We do the runs continuously for several months. And it is not for 1 or 2 days, but we have to guarantee the stability of the catalyst for nearly about a year before it can be taken by a refinery. So we do detailed characterization of the product. So this is an example to show how the products we characterize using 2-dimensional gas chromatography. So if you look at this system, we are able to differentiate exactly between paraffins, cycloalkanes, that is naphthenes, and aromatics. So here what we show that paraffins in the process, we produce about 45% paraffins, about 40% cycloalkanes, and nearly 50% aromatics in the process. So this 2-dimensional GC helps me in exactly understanding what is my composition of the product after a hydroprocessing reaction. Then we also have to understand overall the mechanism of the process. So for that, we developed our own way of doing that. We used a in situ FTIR process where we put this IR probe directly on the catalyst bed at high temperature and high pressure. And this is I think a tool of its own kind in India, which can operate at high temperature and high pressure. And using this FTIR analysis, we were able to understand the pathway of the reaction. What are my intermediates forming? Like I can see that in the process, as more and with time, more and more alkanes are forming. We have carboxylic acids at intermediates, and gradually I am forming aromatics in the process. And then we also have some alcohols, phenols, and acids and esters forming. So by looking at these different product profiles, we can exactly tell the mechanism of the process. Like it is doubtful, like in this process, how I am able to produce aromatics. So by in situ FTIR process, we were able to exactly tell the mechanism of aromatics production in the process, which is shown in this slide. So on the right side, if you look, I will tell you briefly that what I could conclude from FTIR studies was that the triglyceride molecule, it can form either aldehydes or it can form carboxylic acids. But how do I justify the formation of aromatics? So what we observed that we do form cyclic ketones in the process. And if we had not seen the cyclic ketones, we would not have been able to tell the mechanism of or justify the formation of the aromatics. So using in situ FTIR, we were able to identify the intermediate cyclic ketones, which undergo ketoenol tautomerism and further dehydrogenation to produce stable aromatics in the process. Why I am emphasizing aromatics here? Because aromatics formation is something unique globally. No lab has observed this kind of, because several labs have been working on this area. So we are the only lab which report the formation of the aromatics on the process, and this happened because of the unique combination of the catalyst and the process that we used. And at optimum condition, we were able to produce maximum amount of aromatics. Why I emphasize aromatics? Because aromatics is a not only valuable petrochemical, but also in globally, when we look at the aviation biofuels, if we have aromatics in the biofuel, this can be a 100% drop in fuel. That means this fuel can directly be 100% put into aircraft only if I have at least 8% of aromatics formed in the process. So this entire study was able to establish a very competitive technology for aviation biofuels. So here I give a flavor of the kind of catalyst that we produce. So these are encapsulated sub-nano platinum in zeolite cases. What we have done here, that sodalite is basically a kind of very small pore zeolite. So it has a nearly about 2.8 angstrom cages. So inside those cages, we put platinum nanoparticles. And around those platinum nanoparticles inside sodalite cages, we put another shell of catalyst, our traditional hydrocracking catalyst. And using this kind of combination, we are able to improve the overall process life, because this presence of platinum in the sodalite cases, it improves overall the hydrogenation functionality of the catalyst. So here I show how presence of this kind of platinum in sodalite cages, it basically what it does is provides spillover hydrogen for the process. And ultimately, when the hydrocracking reactions are happening, this spillover hydrogen prevents the formation of asphaltenes or methylated aromatic sanolefins, which are precursors to coke. So basically, this spillover hydrogen prevents polymerization of these aromatics into coke kind of material, and coke are basically the precursor for catalyst deactivation. And since we are able to suppress of the coke formation, my catalyst life can go up to nearly up to 1 year or even 2 years. And this is how this spillover mechanism operates, where the hydrogen goes to the platinum site, and from there basically from platinum it migrates to the support site, and then under it is the hydrogen is available for hydrogenation from the support site and not directly from the platinum site, which is the hydrogen dissociation site. This shows more clearly the migration of the hydrogen, dissociated hydrogen towards the aromatic kind of reactants. So we did detailed molecular modeling studies, how we are able to understand that what will be the size of platinum nanoparticles inside the cages. And we do confirm this experimentally that we are able to produce such small size platinum nanoparticles inside the sodalite cages. And further molecular modeling studies were used, because hydrogen sulfide is a poison for platinum, but hydrogen is required to go to the platinum side. So we are able to put this platinum inside the small cages, which prevents the access of hydrogen sulfide to the platinum side, but hydrogen can go to the platinum side. So because of this differentiation, my platinum is very stable and it cannot be deactivated by any kind of poisonous molecules like hydrogen sulfide or any sulfur containing compounds. And we did some detailed study how I am sure that those kind of reactions are really happening, and the molecular modeling helps me to establish that presence of this kind of platinum nanoparticles inside small cages helps to improve my overall vegetable oil conversion reaction. And we synthesize these catalysts after that, and you can see very clean surface and the platinum nanoparticles. We do detailed characterization to understand that the platinum nanoparticles are present, and details can be seen in the publication. But what I want to emphasize that using this kind of characterization tools like FEACM or HRTM, we are able to exactly tell that the platinum is at the position where we want it to be, so that it is only available for hydrogenation reaction, but it is not accessible to poisonous molecules. So these are all detailed characterizations. I will not go into details for that, and how then we do the conversions and of the oil and look at the life of the catalyst, and then we establish the life of the catalyst. How do we understand that my catalyst is stable, and all those detailed studies are done. And then we try to go beyond to improve the catalyst. Like in the overall process, we have a hydrogen consumption. But whether hydrogen, as we understand, it is a very valuable chemical. So can I produce hydrogen in the process rather than having hydrogen consumption in the process? So we improve our catalyst and look at our overall process where we produce more of aromatics. Like if we are producing aromatics, it is a hydrogen removal reaction. So we produce hydrogen in the process and we reduce hydrogen consumption. So what happens here that we overall improve the economics of the process. I will not go into these slides. So this is slide shows a competing technology. UOP Honeywell also produces aviation biofuels, and we have compared our own fuels with the competing global biofuels. And we show that our process produces not only better fuel, but it is more economical because it is a single reactor, single catalyst kind of technology. And these kind of improvements have been possible by improvising the catalyst composition and looking at how we can tailor the catalyst acidity and hydrogenation functionality, so that we have several kind of reactions which are desirable, like deoxygenation, isomerization, cracking, and aromatics happening on the same catalyst, and it happens with high stability over long period of time. And in this slide, we just show the comparison of how when we put the biofuel in the SpiceJet aircraft, and the test flight when it was done between Dehradun and Delhi, we found that overall consumption of this bio-ATF is lower, and the overall performance also was better than your normal fuel. The reason being here, what we understood is that even though normal aviation fuel contains more aromatics, and the aromatics, since they have low energy value, the less calorific value, overall the consumption of fuel in our case is lower. That means compared to your normal jet fuel, the performance of the biofuel is slightly better. Also, additionally, normal to the aircraft fuel, we do also engine test for the diesel that we produce from our technology. And we found that this diesel performs better in terms of showing less fuel, slightly less fuel consumption, and the overall emissions are also lower, like CO, NOx, and unburnt hydrocarbon emissions are lower when we are using these kind of fuels. So I will briefly mention that we always look at the commercial aspects of any process that we are developing, and we have done demonstration of production of this bio aviation turbine fuel, and we have looked at the economics of the process, and which is a very important part of whatever research we do. And we look at whether the technology is competitive or not, and we always benchmark with the globally available fuels and look at the how competitive we are with the global technology. And whenever we are talking about process and technology, we have to look at the reactors. So as a chemist, we also need to have some knowledge about the reactors and how we can modify overall the feed processing inside the reactor, and how we can modify the reactor. Like if you look at in this, we modified the catalyst bed where we put the feed at the different point. Why? Because this process is overall exothermic. So how to control a exothermic reaction? So for that we put some ideas where we can do quenching using a liquid feed and all those are, and we patented this idea. And this we do overall heat calculation in the process, that how is my heat of the reaction, what is the energy balance, and where in which part of the reactor should I put a liquid gas or liquid cold liquid or cold gas, so that I can control my reaction temperature. Not only control the temperature, but we can utilize the overall heat of the reaction. And we do a detailed study using our pilot plants. We have several pilot plants, and we continuously run those pilot plants for nearly about 8 to 12 months. We generate data and look at the possibilities, like what happens to my catalyst bed, what is the how are the yields varying, how I can regenerate my catalyst. And similarly, we do like comparison with different kind of oils. Like if we are in south of India, we may have our used cooking oil with more coconut oil, or we may have jatropha oil in certain regions. So we look at these different feedstock, what is the variation in the product profiling, because it is very important for any technology of this kind to be flexible for taking any kind of feedstock. So we do complete process optimization and process kinetics modeling, and we look at the under what conditions will I have the more of the yield, more yield of the desired products. So finally, I will conclude my presentation that what is the future of biofuels. Like in a very ideal scenario, we should have the condition where we can go directly from the field to the pump. So if we have a woody biomass, it can be directly converted into cellulosic or separated from the lignin. So lignin can be attacked by using a catalyst like such a nickel catalyst. Lignin can be depolymerized, broken down, and we can produce aromatics and chemicals and fuels. Or we can use different kind of ionic liquids to depolymerize the lignin, and we can produce different future fuels like DMF and HMF. Additionally, these enzymes can die, or even enzymes like termites, fungus, and all these can be used to break down the cellulosic feedstock. We can produce soluble sugar from the process. They can be fermented, and we can produce ethanol and butanol for the process. So this is the ideal future bio refinery scenario, where we can directly go from any kind of woody biomass feedstock and we have a chain of processes available which can convert very efficiently these kind of feedstocks into different kind of fuels. So with this final slide, I conclude my presentation, and I thank you everyone for your kind attention, and I hope that I have been able to give a glimpse of what biofuels can do for our country, and I hope it inspires some of the students to take these kind of research areas in their future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sinha. It was a wonderful presentation. We actually could get a glimpse of what the enormous amount of work you do, from basic science to the industrial aspect of the whole thing. That is what we are supposed to do. Actually, we do basic science, where how you are applying the basic science to in an industrial area where you are producing aviation fuel. So it is a wonderful job you are doing. And the catchword was from field to pump. That I liked it very much. From field to pump, how you use catalysts, different catalysts, you use how you improvise the reactors, how you ultimately you produce good aviation fuels. So basically, Karo, Jodi, if you want to ask any questions from sir, how you approach from how our students, basically our students, if you want to ask anything, তোমরা জিজ্ঞেস করতে পারো. Sir will be glad to answer, or our colleagues if they want to answer ask anything. Sir has got 25 patents. Government of India, they use aviation fuels, মানে যেটা আমাদের প্লেন এন্ড এয়ার ফোর্সে ইউজ করা হচ্ছে, the from biofuels he has produced, he's been successful in producing the biofuels. যদি কারো প্রশ্ন থাকে প্লিজ ask.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. My question is, in terms of today's scenario, how much it is beneficial to us, the fuel you are producing or preparing or research you are doing, it will benefit the mankind, like in terms of profit and in terms of bulk amount you can produce for the for use of the today's life.
Yeah, so this is very valid question. In fact, today one of the refinery is taking this technology, and this is all because of the government direction to make this a reality. So I hope very soon we will have one refinery where this technology will be put to practice. A big demonstration plant is in the pipeline in the south of India. So what it will do is it will catalyze the usage of or streamline the availability of, we use lot of cooking oil, and we also waste lot of cooking oil. So as I showed in some of the slides, so all those feedstocks which we do have in our country, which is surplus in terms of it is not edible, but it goes waste. So we will be utilizing those kind of feedstocks. Plus, what it will do, as I mentioned, it will help in the afforestation. And we have more of tree plantation, so there is a dual benefit. Plus, like I mentioned, that there can be crop rotation. So farmer who is growing mustard, in another season he can also plant carinata kind of a mustard family, but it is not edible. So all those kind of feedstocks, they will get a boost if we have a technology, and there is a lot of support, and it looks that globally these are now a commercial reality, but in India it is still to take off. So it is something that we have already in the stage where it is going towards commercial success.
So when you will finalizing your like commercializing your products, how much do you think it will be profitable compared to the kind of fuels we are using now, and your kind of biofuel you will be commercializing in terms of profit?
Yeah, so this is always competitive, and it depends on the price of the feedstock. For example, today if my used cooking oil or waste oil is available, we have done the economics of that at the price of 30 rupees per liter, if my feedstock is available, it is competitive with your normal fuel like your normal diesel fuel or normal jet fuel, the prices are competitive. Additionally, there is another issue which I like to highlight, that these aviation biofuels will become mandatory. That means that in spite, even if the prices are high, slightly higher, all the aircrafts will have to be mandatorily use about 5 to 10% of these biofuels. So there is a economic aspect as well as there is a regulatory aspect, where because of the CO2 emissions, we must use these biofuels. But as your question was about the economics, so it is economically competitive, I mean to say, and it is something which is globally competitive commodity.
Okay, got it.
So any more questions from students?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm Namneet Kaur. So I'm Namneet Kaur, research scholar for IMT University. Sir, any training will be provided by the CSIR organization for the production of biofuel?
Training, actually we do take training, students for training. They come for 2 months summer training or 6 months summer training, and normally we have a MOU with the different colleges or universities, and based on that the students, whenever they have those normally you have summer training courses for 2 months, I think, or some colleges have 6 months. They do come to our labs for that. So you can always send your application and then it can be processed and you can work in our labs.
Okay, so thanks so much.
Any more questions?
Sir, my name is Raj Shah. So I can ask this: sugar is a biofuel, or sugar is a biofuel?
Sugar, you mean?
Yes, sir.
No, sugar is not biofuel. Sugar is something we should not eat much, but it can be converted to biofuel. What happens now? Sugar can be, after fermentation, it can be converted to ethanol. So sugar is a precursor to biofuel. Sugar, after fermentation, you make biofuel, that is ethanol. And ethanol, that is, you know about ethanol blending program of our country. So 5% ethanol, it goes into fuel. Plus ethanol can be also dehydrated and oligomerized. You can make higher hydrocarbons. That is already there is the sugar to aviation kerosene kind of technology is already there. Technology is demonstrated. And where they take sugar, they convert to alcohol, then they further put into higher hydrocarbons, which becomes fuel. So sugar is a precursor to fuel.
Any more questions? Okay, if there are not any more questions, so I'm asking one question. So mostly you have been as a biofuel, as a precursor, and as a from the plant products, you are using Jatropha, and you had used Jatropha. And what else did you use?
Other than we have used
Cooking oil you are
cooking
using.
oil,
Yeah, cooking
based
oil.
oil,
Yeah.
even palm stearin, palm oil. So after fractionation, palm oil, which we used mostly in cooking, it is fractionated and one part goes into making soaps, etc. That is called palm stearin.
Yes.
So that is a very important commodity, and we have converted that. I think almost all kind of oils today available we have run on our plant.
Okay.
So there is barely something, I think there is something like mahua and all that we have not done yet, we could not get. But
Okay.
mostly all of kind of oils we have run.
So do you find
May
any
I ask
difference?
one question,
Okay, yes,
Mansi?
yes,
May I
yes,
ask one
yes,
question?
yes.
Yeah, please.
Did you use algal strains?
Yeah, I
Which
use algal oil. I did.
From which algae? From which algae? That's what.
Actually, it is called B. brownie. I remember it was long time back. That gives the highest yield of oil, and it was not produced in our lab, but there are some labs which are making that algal oil, and we directly procured from them. So it is not from any particular strain. These are from different strains, and different labs are producing. Like we got some from Japanese company, so they have their own mix of algae, and they just provide us the oil, but they don't give the
So,
details of the algae.
so that was from a mixed culture, not from a monoculture.
Monoculture also we did, but it was not, I mean, on the laboratory scale. On the larger scale, we did with mixed culture.
Yeah, that's the problem with algae. A mixed culture occurs.
Yeah,
Maintaining a monoculture is very difficult
yeah, that also
in
we
mass
also
scale.
learned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Japanese are doing a lot on that. They have set up several demonstration scale units in Malaysia and making from mixed culture, and they say that they are successful, but they are yet to be true in terms of economics.
So for
Okay,
all
thank you.
precursors which you have been using, which has the maximum calorific value? Means what have you found?
I mean, in feedstock, you mean?
Feedstock unit, yeah.
Yeah, feedstock, more or less all these oils are nearly identical.
Okay.
Except, for example, like castor oil, we don't use it, has longer chain of hydrocarbon. But nearly, if you see, the oxygen content and all that are more or less similar. But what we can say is the best result we got with the Jatropha oil. In fact, what we got with Jatropha oil, we never got that kind of product quality with other oils in terms of aviation biofuels.
Okay. So Jatropha was the best. Means
Yeah.
it was more reproducible. So you could catalyze and further you can less amount of loss.
Selective. I mean, because we were able to produce more aromatics for using that rope.
Yeah.
And because aromatics is required in the process, so
Yes.
selectivity for aromatics was more when we used Jatropha.
Yeah, and the carbon footprint was also quite diminished.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there are many factors which you have to look into. You have to look into the reaction parameters. You have to look in the catalysts used. So the total chemistry is being used, and you have to look into the industrial applications also about the large reactors. So it is a very interesting job. If we can go and get a look at your petroleum Institute of Petroleum, it would be very interesting.
Yeah, so you are all invited and welcome anytime. You can visit our plants are always running 24/7.
Yeah.
And we will be very happy to have you people here. Sure.
Yes. It was a very interesting aspect to hear. So if we do not have any more questions for our students, which we are saying, because we all study and ultimately you diversify and you have so many different things to do with science. Professor Anil Kumar Sinha and I myself had studied physical chemistry, but he has diversified and he is a petroleum expert now and a biodiesel expert now. So you can do so many things. So tomader jonne bolchi, it is so inspiring to hear a talk from him, and thank you so much for such readily listening to my requests and keeping my request. Thank you so much, so very much, and I will formally, the vote of thanks will be given by our young professor, Dr. Dipankar Mondal, and after that we will conclude our session.
Thank you, Manishidi. First of all, many thanks to Dr. Anil Kumar Sinha to share your work with us. I think students must have motivated by your works, and in future they should have taken this field as their research career. So when I was listening to your work, two things came to my mind. One, about one movie I have seen, that is Interstellar. So the world is becoming now very difficult to live for us. So people are searching for new planet, how we can live there. And another is one poem which is from poet Shukanta Bhattacharya. I will read few lines and then I will try to translate so you can understand. So the lines I am starting with in Bengali, this is how the জীর্ণ পৃথিবীতে ব্যর্থ মৃত আর ধ্বংসস্তূপ পিঠে চলে যেতে হবে আমাদের চলে যাব তবু আজ যতক্ষণ দেহে আছে প্রাণ প্রাণপণে পৃথিবীর সরাবো জঞ্জাল এই বিশ্বকে এই শিশুর বাসযোগ্য করে যাব আমি নবজাতকের কাছে ইয়ে আমার দৃঢ় অঙ্গীকার So if I translate it in English, so this world is not good to live in. It's very difficult for us, but we have to leave this world one day. But as long as we have life in us, we will try to remove all the garbage. And we are taking oath. We will try to make this world so clean and so comfortable for the children to live in. So in terms of your research, using this kind of fuels, not polluting our environment, making biofuels, it gives us that kind of sense. So that's why many thanks to you to
Very nice word.
to introduce to share your work with us. I would also like to thank our principal, Professor Papia Chakraborty, allowing us to organize such a seminar. I'd also like to thank Manashidi to conducting such a seminar, and also obviously many thanks to the students and all the attendees. Without them, it would have not been possible to make this event as a successful one. By saying this, I am concluding today's seminar on the occasion of National Science Day.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.